Welcome to the studio tonight. Well, tonight we're going to do something a little bit different. You get to see the face behind the hands. So I painted a painting that I want to share with you. But while I was making the video, the TV was on, the radio was on, kids were bothering me, the phone was going off, all kinds of mayhem was going on, and I couldn't do a voice while I was painting. So I'm going to have to do a voiceover, which also means I'm going to have to do an introduction. Here we are. So the painting that I have for you tonight is of a footbridge in Zion National Park over the Virgin River. Beautiful place. If you've never been there, you should make a trip to go there. It is truly one spectacular place to visit. But I don't want to hold you up and let me ramble on about that. Let's get to the painting, and I'll see you at the end. Okay, here we are. I've pre-drawn my picture on my travel sketchbook. This is a Strathmore 400 series watercolor notebook, spiral bound, and I'm using my Prima brand watercolor paints. These are the Tropicals that I'm using. They're nice paints. I enjoy using them, and they have this nice tin that comes with them. So what I'm doing here is I'm dropping in a little bit of blue for the sky, of course. I'm not trying to overwork it. I'm taking it right down to the horizon line, right down to the top of the peaks of the mountains and the tops of the trees. And I'm just blotting out a little bit where I've gone over that line, just a touch. Now you see I do have some big white spaces in the sky there. Those are some trees that I'm going to be getting to in just a second. So all of the rocks in Zion National Park are this beautiful orangey red color. And so for that I'm going to use my reds, orange, ochre color, and a brown, and I'm going to mix those. And for my greens, I'm going to try to keep them a little bit muted. And so if I need to, I'm going to mix in a little bit of ochre with those and a little bit of brown also. My paper wasn't quite dry enough there, so just give it a shot with the old hair dryer and that will dry it right off. Here we go. Putting in a little bit of ochre and a little bit of red in there to try and simulate those unbelievable colors in the rocks in Zion National Park. I'm going to try not to overmix these colors. I'm going to try to let some of them mix on the paper. I do struggle with that a little bit here and there, but I think I'm going to be able to manage to not do too much, and I'm just blocking in some color at this point. I know that they need to be orange and red, a little bit of yellow in there. And I know there's lots of cracks and crevices in here, but right now I just want to put the basic color in, and we'll come back in and get all those cracks and crevices in just a little bit. There we go, just painting around the tree trunk and wiping away just a little bit of extra. Okay, so there's a ridge line just in front of the mountain face that we just painted, and there's a little bit of greenery right on the top, so I want to just leave a little bit of white space in there for that. And there it is. I'm going to drop a little bit of it on. If it runs just a bit, that's okay. There we go, just like that. And you see I put some of my red color, rock color, inside the trees, inside the foliage on the left-hand side. Some of the trees you can kind of see through, and so I want to leave a little bit of the rock color behind them. Okay, so I'm going on and painting in my leaves. I'm just putting in big blocks of color here on the tops of the bushes of leaves, the bunches of leaves. I want to put a lighter green color, and on the bottoms I want to put in a little bit darker green color. So that's what I'm doing here. Anything that I think is going to be in the sunlight gets a light green. Anything that I think is going to be in shadow gets a darker green. And there we go. I'm just going to darken up a little bit. There it is. And I didn't mention it, but the green in the back on the lower right hand side has a little bit of blue, a light blue, the same blue that we used in the sky, mixed in with it to help push it back into the painting just a little bit. So now I'm just blocking in the colors in the trees on the left hand side. There are quite a lot of trees out there, and I'm trying to follow my own rules in that if excuse me, if something is in the sun, it gets a darker, if it's in the sun, it gets a lighter green. If it's in the shade, it gets a darker green. And we'll go on from there. And there we go. And I'm trying to remember the form and shape of the trees as they are and paint them in individual blocks. I know they are running together a little bit. I do have some lines in there that will help differentiate them, but I'm hoping that a little bit of color here and there will help also. Now I'm painting right along the riverbank and underneath the footbridge at the moment. There's a little bit of green there. It's a brown green. I've kind of lightened it a little bit. I'm mixing kind of a gray, brown gray where the bank of the water is, the actual bank. When it comes up and goes back down and dries off a little bit, the rocks seem to gray out a little bit instead of having that bright orangey color. So I'm just putting in a muted color for that. Alright, there we go. And some more trees on the left hand side, along with the shadow area on those trees. Now the bank on the right hand side has not a whole lot of vegetation on it, so I'm going to allow it to be a little bit rockier, a little bit grayer, a little bit darker, and almost no green in there. Painting around a few of the rocks that I've got drawn in. There we go, and just dabbing the color on, letting the color do what it wants to do. And I'm going to mix up a little bit of color that was a little bit too strong to use as my water. There we go. And I'm drawing only, or painting only parallel lines here. Not that I think you're going to be able to see a whole lot of it, but if your eye can pick it up, I wanted to see parallel lines and make it look like the depth of field is a lot greater. So wherever I paint the water, I paint it in a nice horizontal fashion. I'm mixing up a little bit of extra color here, and I'm going to paint some shadows of the rocks that I've got on the shoreline and the rocks that are in the water. I'm also going to come back, add a little bit of color to them, and just put in a slight bit of color on the face of those rocks. You did see I added a little bit of orange. I want them to be somewhat similar to the background colors, but just different enough that they stand out. Alright, I'm putting in a tree trunk, the distant tree on the side. I should also mention that I'm using a rigger brush right now. It's a Grumbacher number 1 rigger brush. There we go, and if you excuse me for just a moment, I'm going to need to turn that over to get the right angle to paint the trunk of this tree, also using my rigger brush. There we go, and right up into those leaves, just put in a few branches there. Give the indication of the branching of the branches. All right, now I've got to be brave. I've got to know what I'm doing. I've got to have a steady hand to paint in the footbridge. And there we go, keeping the lines as parallel as I can between the top and the bottom. Now I'm going to put in some lines to differentiate the shoreline on the far bank. Just a little bit. Maybe that's that little muddy area where the water sometimes laps up on the shore. But just a little bit to give a little bit more differentiation between the shoreline and the waterline. And using the edge of my brush, just going to put in some rough parts there just to give it some texture. And smooth a few things out on the waterline, adding a little bit of extra darkness to give it a little bit more depth. Now I'm coming back. My mountain in the background has dried all the way at this point, and I want to put in some of the cracks and crevices back there just to add a little bit of detail. So I'm going to draw those in with a little bit of my dark color. There we go. And what I'm going to do is get my brush almost dry and just pull that out, feather that out on one side. And it'll look just like there's a little bit of shadow and a big crease or crevice right in front of it. There we go, and you can see that happening as we speak. So just wherever I think those need to go, I'm not trying to do it exactly how it is in the picture, but similar. There we go. And a nice big one there. And you can see how adding just these little bits of lines and feathering them out on one side really give that rock a lot of detail back there. Makes it look like it's got these big gaping holes in it. There we go. Just as much as you want or as little as you want. And that's it. I think we're done. I'm going to sign this one and call it good. So there we are. I hope you liked it. And if you liked the video, click the like button down below, wherever it is, and subscribe to my channel. That will ensure that you're going to get a notification of any videos that I have coming up in the future. I had fun painting with you. I hope you stop by again. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.